Hello, everybody, and welcome. So, for today, in our Foundation Series webinar, we are going to be looking at overviews and tools. So there's quite a lot to cover in this one, so I will try and make it as quick and snappy as I can. Over this series, we've looked at just about everything that we would need to get a working Loxone system. We've looked at lighting control, heating, shading. We've looked at music, we've looked at config and how we use it at function blocks. And today, overviews and tools really ties everything all together to give you a nice central overview of things and tools where you can start planning these systems and you can check these systems out. And so this is going to be our topic of today. So with overview and tools, we are going to be looking at all-out mode and night mode. I've alluded to them a couple of times already throughout this series, and today we're actually going to configure them. We're also going to be looking at overview blocks themselves. We've actually already had one in this series. We had a shading overview. Now we're going to be looking at the other overview blocks we can use and how we bring them into all-out mode and night mode. And then finally, we're going to be looking at the various tools we have in Loxone to help you both plan projects out, configure a project quicker, and also to diagnose any potential problems you come up against. And so, unlike our previous slideshows, for today, there will be no products page because our products are out of the way, they're done with. We're going to be focusing solely on configuring everything. And so I've mentioned all-out mode before. Now, our recommendation, part of the Loxone standard, is that any switch that leads to the outside world, so as in that picture there, our hallway switch, we should be able to triple tap that switch and it should turn the whole house off. Now, I've already demonstrated that to you with the burglar alarm, that when we triple click this switch here, the burglar alarm arms. Why don't we bring other things into that as well? So as well as the burglar alarm, it should turn off all the lights in the house. It should turn on present simulation mode. We haven't talked about present simulation yet, but when you're in present simulation mode, it makes your lights in your house randomly turn on throughout the evening when you're not there to make it look like someone's at home. It should stop all the music playing. It should trigger automatic shading to start again. It should cancel any overrides you've got on your intelligent room controllers. And if you have or are lucky enough to have things like saunas, it should turn those off. And anything like media controllers, like cinema control, again, they should be off as well. And then when we arrive back home, our burglar alarm should deactivate, disarm. If we've got away mode on, so our frost protection and our heating, that should turn off as well. And if we wanted it to, we could also get things like lights and music in our hallway to start playing to welcome us home. Then, so that is what we're going to be configuring in a second. I'm not going to worry about that just yet. And then very, very similarly is night mode. So night mode is a triple click in a bedroom. And that should do very, very similar to leaving house. So night mode should still arm our burglar alarm, but this time it should do our perimeter alarm, our home set, whatever we want to refer to it as. So normally a burglar alarm that just includes external door and window contacts, maybe a couple of motion sensors downstairs. It should again turn off all the lights. It should stop all our music playing. It should cancel any overrides and basically just turn the house off. We could also get it to do things like disable the motion sensor in our bedroom when it's night mode. And in night mode as well, we want to bring in extra functionality like motion in rooms other than bedrooms, going to a nice dim mood on motion. And again, we're going to be configuring it in a minute. And then we are also going to be looking at overview blocks. Overview blocks are function blocks which you can visualize in the app, which tie everything of that function in one place. So as we've already seen, a shading overview brings all of your automatic blinds controllers into one single block so you can control them in one place. And on the overview block, you have the same inputs that you have on the independent controllers. Only this time, when I activate, let's say, CU complete up on a shading overview, it sends all the blinds up. And now that we've covered overview blocks, before we finish the slideshow, let's get started. So here I am on config, and I'm actually going to start with overviews. So before we move on to night mode and all out, let's start with our overview blocks. So we've already got a shading overview. We've already added it into the whole house. We've already linked it to the 2 blinds blocks that we've created. So that one is essentially done. If we go to add function block and we press F5 and it brings up the search bar and we type in overview, we can see the other available overview blocks that Loxone has. So we've got a garage and gate controller overview. We've got a music server overview, shading overview, lighting overview, and security overview. So if we were to have multiple burglar alarm blocks, we could have a single security overview to set all of them, for instance, when we leave the house. So let's worry about the music overview. And let's worry about the lighting overview, because those are function blocks that we do have. So when I drop an overview block onto the page, it asks me which of the function blocks of that kind do I want to link to this overview block. So I want to link all of them. And again, like with everything, you could have as many overview blocks as you wanted. So you could have a downstairs shading overview and a bedroom shading overview. So you can make all of your bedroom blinds go down at, say, 8 p.m, but all of the rest of the house stays open until dusk, if you wanted to. And also lighting overview, we are going to add as well. And again, I'm going to link it to those 2 lighting controllers. Now, the other thing with overview blocks is, provided they have at least a 1-star rating and they are in a room that has a room type of central. So where we have rooms, I don't know if you remembered right at the beginning of the series, every room has a room type. If you have a room that has a room type of central and your overview blocks are linked to that room and they have at least a 1-star rating, then they actually show on their own place in the Loxone app. And to show you that, let's just save in, and then I will open up the web interface. So just let my mini server reboot. As you can see, as we've added more and more functions to it, as we've gone on throughout the series, it takes a little bit longer to reboot. So now, I've already shown you the rooms pages where you can look in each room. So we could go into the whole house room and we can see all our overviews in here. But because those are overview blocks and we've given them at least a 1-star rating, they now also appear on the central tab in our app. So all of our overviews are now appearing here in the central function. And we can see from those overview blocks that lighting is currently on in 2 rooms and music is currently on in 1 room. Awesome. If I click into the block, it shows me both of the rooms and I can turn them all off with a single press. And there we go, that's off. I can turn them all on with a single press. Or I could click into each one independently, click on moods, and it takes me right to that particular lighting controller. Same with music overview. There's all of our rooms. I can start playing and stop playing in all of the rooms in one foul swoop, or I could select each one independently and choose to play something and do volume controls independently in each room. And again, same with shading. So it gives us an overall interaction for every function of that kind. And as I said, we've got lighting overviews, music overviews, shading overviews. There's a burglar alarm overview, gate garage controller overview. So there's overview blocks for any kind of function block that you would generally have in multiple places in multiple rooms. And then finally, you can also make your climate controller appear on that central page in the interface as well. And again, it just needs to be in a room with a room type of central, be used on the user interface, and have at least a 1-star rating. As long as it has at least a 1-star rating, my climate controller will now also appear in that central tab. So again, let's just allow this to reboot. Patience is a virtue. Here we go, central, and look at that. There is my climate controller. It's called boiler because that's what I named it, and as we can see, it's currently heating up. And if I click on it, it shows me all the rooms that I've linked to that climate controller and what their current state is. Do they have a heating demand? Do they have a cooling demand? Or do they have no demand? And very, very simply, from one single place, I can tweak them as well. So my kitchen is currently in my comfort period, which is why I've got the option for plus and minus. So I can quickly adjust the temperature up and down. My bedroom, however, is currently in its economy setback, which is why I don't have plus or minus. But if I pressed this little button here, it would override it to now be in comfort setting. And if I go on that, we can actually see that with that lower green bar now, that's telling me that I've overridden it to be comfort. And I can stop the override just as easily. The reason the little green bar is still there is because it thinks that it needs to start heating up now to get to comfort temperature on time. That's because I don't really have a switch in that room, so it's reading 0 degrees. So I think it's probably right. Brilliant. So now that we've covered overviews, let's cover those all out and night mode functions. So let's start with all out, because we've actually already started making that to a degree. If you remember, yesterday, we took a memory flag from the RAQ output in the lighting controller in the hall. So RAQ is a pulse when a triple click is detected on a switch. And we linked that to our burglar alarm. So that triple click arms the burglar alarm. So we're already part of the way there to our all out function. Now, what I'm actually going to do is this leaving house memory flag. I'm actually going to rename this as leaving house hall. So it tells me where this memory flag is coming from. And then I'm actually going to take this memory flag off the burglar alarm as an input. The reason being is that what happens if I leave the house and forget to triple click? I want to have a simple single function I can do within the app to do the whole house off function without having to go into every single function block, which I wouldn't be able to do with that single memory flag going everywhere. So that memory flag is still linked to RAQ, but at the moment it doesn't go anywhere as an input. And the reason for that is that I am actually going to add an extra function block that is going to define my all out. And that function block, I need it to turn on and off. And for anyone that remembers right at the start of the series, the simplest block to do that is a switch block. So I'm going to add a switch block into my whole house. That switch block, I'm going to rename as all out. I'm also going to give it at least 1 star because again, then it can show on my central page of my interface. I'm also going to tick use interface password because I don't want somebody that nicks my phone to be able to turn my house off. And the other cool thing about switch block is you can actually assign an icon to it that displays in the interface as well. So we could take an icon that makes sense for everyone is out of the house, something like that, with a little house with somebody walking away from it, and that will also show in the app. And then now, on this all-out switch, we have a trigger which changes it on and off. Don't want to use that. I want my triple click to always turn this switch on, and I want my arriving home with the NFC code touch that, again, we had already done to turn this switch off. So that leaving house hall is going to be the on, so the O, and that triple click of arriving home that we did yesterday as well from the NFC code touch, again, is not going to directly disarm the alarm, but is instead going to reset the switch block. The next thing I'm going to do is get us into the idea of operating modes. Operating modes have many, many functions. You can use them in intelligent room controllers as part of the schedule. You can use them on generic schedule blocks as part of a schedule. And they're also tied into motion-based lighting. And so when we are all out, when we are not in the house, we want two things to happen. We want our all-out operating mode to come on. So when we leave, our all-out operating mode comes on. We also, whenever we have left the house, also want our present simulation mode to come on. I'm also going to create an extra operating mode just at the top there, and I'm going to call that at home, because I'm a perfectionist and I think that if I have an operating mode for all out, I should also have the reverse for at home. Now, because at home is the opposite of all out, we need to make it work in opposite land. Technical term for that is inversion. And for that, we use a not block. So our at home operating mode goes there, and that not block links to Q on the switch block. So when the switch block is off, at home is on, and when the switch block is on, at home is off. Okay, so that's operating modes. It's not really somewhere that I can show you where we're touching those operating modes just yet, but the next thing we need is to do the pulses to turn all the music off, turn all the lights off, and the burglar alarm. The same switch block that we're using that has this output that is a permanent on or permanent off, if we press the grey plus, we've also got the rising edge and the falling edge. Now, this is something that if you don't know what a rising and falling edge is, I'd recommend you do a quick Google. But basically, when a signal is going high or low, so when an input or an output is going on or off, the rising edge is as it's first going on, and the falling edge is as it's coming back off again. So as this switch block is first turning on, Q on will pulse, will be a momentary signal on it. When the switch block is coming back off, Q off will again just momentarily pulse. And so I'm then going to have two more memory flags onto Q on and Q off. The off memory flag is going to be called arriving home. But what I'm actually going to do first is rename this one to NFC access granted. So our Q off is going to be arriving home. And our Q on is going to be leaving house. And so now, just to show you this in simulation. So now I'm in simulation, watch this. When we leave the house, so at the moment, we're at home. When we get that memory flag for leaving house, we're no longer at home. Present simulation and all out is on. And you wouldn't have been able to see it because it was about 0.1 seconds, the momentary pulse, but Q on will have also pulsed. When we arrive back home, the reverse happens and arriving home will have pulsed. So now that we've got these two memory flags instead, these are now what I'm going to link to everything in the house. So, first and foremost, burglar alarm, arm, and disarm. So, arriving home is going to disarm, leaving house is going to arm. Shading overview. Leaving house is going to activate automatic shading. Leaving house activates automatic shading. And the reason I'm doing it from the memory flags on the end of the switch instead of the original ones I had is so that I can see this switch in the app if I forget to triple click. Music overview. We've got off, single pulse turns zone off. So leaving house also turns music off. And then lighting overview, we have R on here as well. Digital input, pulse activates mood all off. And so again, leaving house, leaving house triggers R. Save that in. And that is now our triple click to turn the whole house off and our NFC code touch to deactivate the burglar alarm. I haven't got the NFC linked to the lighting or the music or the shading because I'm going to let motion take over from that point. But to show you this working in the app, just let it reboot. Here we go. So again, because I gave that switch block at least 1 star, that is now on the central page of my app. So I have my NFC tag and I have my fingers. So when I triple click, you can see this switch block came on and all of these turned off. We'll also be able to see under our security category. Oh, where did I put it? Where did I put it? There we go, burglar alarm. That our burglar alarm is also setting. So all of that done by the triple click to leave the house. And then in the reverse, I arrive back home, present my fob. There we go, straight away. Lighting is now allowed to work again with the motion sensor. And in the whole house, burglar alarm is disarmed. How cool is that? No multiple things to do, no masses to remember. Triple click when I walk out, fob when I come back in, whole house done for me. I also said that I probably want to cancel any overrides on my heating. To do that, on each intelligent room controller, you again have an input R. And R, all active timers and delay timers. So basically any overrides are cancelled. So again, that leaving house memory flag goes into R of all of your intelligent room controllers. Just like our leaving room did earlier in the series. And so that's our global functions. Have I missed anything? All out mode, arms the burglar alarm, tick, turns off all the lights, ticks, activates present simulation, tick, stops the music, tick, activates automatic shading, tick, cancels any overrides, tick. Don't have any media controllers or wellness devices, so I can't show you those. Then on to the idea of present simulation. So now with that switch block, we will be activating the present simulation operating mode. Now we need to tell our lighting controllers that they're part of present simulation. To do that, we go to each lighting controller, and then on the parameters on the left-hand side, we have an option here, use in present simulation. And when we tick that, we can say the start time and the end time for present simulation, the minimum number of activations, the maximum number of activations, the minimum time and the maximum time, and what mood. And so what this will mean is when I go out with a triple click, when dusk hits, between dusk and 11 p.m, the lights in the kitchen will come on at least once and a maximum of 4 times for at least 30 minutes and a maximum of 180 minutes to a random mood. Now, it is really important that present simulation for us, we've made it random. The reason for that is if you were super paranoid or you had a super high security house and there was somebody sat outside in their car looking at your house day in, day out, and if it had recorded your schedule over the last, say, 2 or 3 days and your schedule had stayed the same, if you're away for that house for 2 or 3 weeks, you might have at exactly 8:02 p.m. every single day, the same lights in the kitchen turning on. Now that doesn't look natural. And so we have randomized it because randomized looks more like human behavior. Save that in, and that's now my present simulation done as well. And then about the final thing to show you that I can show you for leaving the house and for night mode. I didn't show you earlier in the week. I'm actually just going to create a second whole house page just because that one's filling up. So my advice would always be never let your pages get too full. If you're getting a page that's getting too full, create a new one. On our music server, we have 2 outputs that we haven't used. We've got music server on and music server off. Now, what that does is that actually puts our music server into sleep or hibernation mode to save some extra power. And so what we could also do is we could link our leaving house memory flag to music server off. And we could link our arriving home memory flag to music server on. Because when we're out of the house, we don't really need our music server to be on. It can happily be in hibernation. But if we do that, we need to remember to have the music server turned back on, ready for if the burglar alarm needs to go off. So what we would do is on the burglar alarm, the silent alarm phase, we would have the music server wake back up. So silent alarm, the music server would wake back up so that it is on, ready for when the audible alarm happens. And that's something else we could do to make our home a little bit more efficient. Now that we've covered those bits, let's do night mode. Night mode is very, very similar. So there is not a lot of difference between night mode and all out mode. So with night mode, we would again have a switch block. Now night mode you could do globally, so the master bedroom turns off the whole house, or you could do it on a room by room basis so that the kids' rooms only turn off their rooms and then the master bedroom turns off the whole house. As long as you understand the principle of how to create it, you can make whatever you want happen. So switch block, then I'm going to rename night. I'm also going to require the user interface password, and I'm going to give it a symbol, an icon of night. And on this switch block, I again want to have an operating mode called night that is turned on with the switch block. I again am going to want the rising edge and the falling edge. I am again going to want a couple of memory flags for the on, which is going to be night mode pulse or night mode active, whatever your naming convention you like, and the off, which I'm going to call good morning. And again, I'm going to need something to turn this switch block on and off. The on is going to be RAQ from the bedroom lighting controller, which ironically I have not created. So I'm going to just quickly create one. So lighting controller in the bedroom, same T5 in there. And I'm just going to quickly add in a motion sensor as well. So bedroom, and then we have motion sensor on the ceiling, brightness and motion. Not going to worry about putting an output for a light there just yet. But what we would do from this lighting controller is, again, we would have RAQ. We would again create a memory flag. That memory flag would go on RAQ, and we would name it something like good night. Then that memory flag would be the on for this switch. So good night would turn this switch on. And then again, just as we have done with all out, the night mode pulse would arm the burglar alarm, but this time I'm not going to use V. I am going to use VNM, which arms the burglar alarm without motion sensors. I'm just going to give myself a little bit more space. So this time, VNM. So night mode pulse into VNM. Shading overview. I probably don't want to do anything with shading with night mode, because if you remember early in the week, we used Autopilot Designer to bring all the blinds down anyway. But I do want it to turn all the music off. So night mode pulse turns all the music off, and night mode pulse also turns all of the lights off. And again, we could also have it tied into our intelligent room controllers, that the night mode pulse also cancels any overrides. And that is the setting of our night mode. So that's turning our night mode on. Now, before I get to turning night mode off, I'm going to bring in the next bit of operating modes and specifically why I have used the night operating mode. The reason for that is, firstly, in the bedroom, I want to disable the motion sensor when we're in night mode. And so on the lighting controller in the bedroom, I have an input dis-M. Dis-M disables motion sensors, stops the motion sensors from bringing lights on. So I can take that night operating mode out and put it onto dis-M. But in all of the other rooms in the house, I actually do want my motion to still work. If I'm getting up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, I do want to have lights to guide my way, but this time just really, really dim. So what I can do is on the other room's lighting controllers, create myself an operating mood for night, a mood for night that is just super, super dim, like I've done there, super, super dim blue. And then I go into the automatic tab. And on the automatic tab, we actually looked at this earlier in the week. I say during the night operating mode, we go to the night mood on motion. So now when this switch block goes to night, this motion sensor will still work, but this time it will turn my lights to a very, very dim mood. And let me just make sure that my parameters are set so that I can show you this. They are wonderful. So let's save this in and let's show you this working. So again, while that's saving in, back to my web interface. I, of course, don't really have a switch to show you this with because I've already used 2 switches there and there. But because I've put it through that switch block, again, I have the ability to do it within the app. So just going to let my mini server reboot. Just going to be in a position where my lights are on as well. So rooms, whole house, night mode. And again, it is also here because I gave it at least 1 star. You could, if you wanted, make it room bedroom. It's entirely up to you. But press it, put in the user interface password, and everything turns off. I'm now going to cover my motion sensor. And while I'm covering my motion sensor, I'm going to switch to my webcam for the demo case. There we go. When I've covered it for what I think is a reasonable amount of time, that the timeout will have happened on the motion sensor, I'm going to lift my hand up to trigger motion. And what should happen is that LED strip should go a very dim blue instead of the orange it was previously going. So let's see if I've waffled on long enough. There we go. Very, very dim blue. And as you can hear, the burglar alarm has just gone off as well. That's because I put an alarm siren in there that, again, I don't really have, which means that the tamper input's gone off. So I'm just going to disarm that. But you can see that the motion sensor in the bedroom, or motion sensor, sorry, in another room of the house other than the bedroom, brought on the night lighting in that room. So just a very, very dim light. So now that we've sorted out night mode being set, we need to sort out night mode being unset. Now, again, multiple ways of doing this. We provide you a recommendation, but again, your home is your home. So you do what feels best for you, or on consultation with the customer, do what is best for them. So my recommended way of doing it would firstly to be using a night light. So see it just behind me there, touch night light air. That can be used as an alarm clock. The alarm clock you don't need the touch night light for. You can actually have the function block on its own without the night light feature. Or you could integrate it into the night light. What I would do is I would have the night light or the alarm clock a couple of minutes before your alarm goes off to start dimming the lights up in the room, and also to just lift the shading up a touch. And when the alarm clock goes off, that takes your house out of night mode. So what I would do is I would add in a night light. So touch night light air. That would go on my bedside table in my bedroom. I would then drag it out And as I drag it out, it automatically adds the alarm clock function block for me. On this, I can set my alarm duration, how long before my alarm goes off that a preparation pulse happens, how long it snoozes for, and the brightness levels when it's inactive and the brightness levels when it's active, as well as the alarm sound and the alarm volume. You can even have it so the alarm volume increases incrementally over a couple of minutes. And then from this alarm clock, we have some outputs. We have QAR, which goes off when the alarm clock goes off. We also have QTA, which provides a pulse at the start of the alarm. And we also have QTP, which provides a pulse, so a momentary signal at the preparation time before the alarm. And so it's actually QTA and QTP that I am going to use. And so QTP, our preparation pulse. What I'm going to do with that is I'm going to link that into up on my blinds in the bedroom. And so what that will do is 3 minutes, or whatever the time in here is set, before my alarm goes off, it will do a short pulse on my blinds in the bedroom to make them lift up a touch, to let some natural sunlight in. QTP, that preparation pulse, will also go into my lighting controller. And on my lighting controller, there is an input BU. Single pulse turns on the wake up mood, and it slowly fades it up as well. So it doesn't go straight to that brightness. It actually fades it up over 3 minutes. And all you need is a mood in your lighting controller called, let's say, alarm clock, that is linked to the input BU. And then that is the mood that will come on with your alarm clock with that BU input, and it will slowly fade up if your lights are dimmable. And then the QTA pulse. So when the alarm actually goes off, if I want, I could get it to start playing some music. So again, we've got a BU input on the music server zone for the alarm clock. And we can say whether the alarm clock plays a chime or plays music. And that same QTA pulse, I also want to go to that switch, that night mode switch, to reset it so it turns night mode off again. But certain days of the week, I won't set an alarm. Saturdays, Sundays, bank holidays, lockdown, probably don't set an alarm for myself. So I want a way in which night mode will always turn off every day, regardless of anything else. Loads of ways that you could do this. You could start investing in some really, really fuzzy logic of saying, okay, what about if a motion sensor goes off in my bathroom after 7 a.m.? That means I'm now up. Loads and loads of different ways you could do it. Or you could just do it a very, very simple way with something like a pulse at block. And that gives a momentary pulse on cue at a certain time. And so your pulse at block, you could say at 9 a.m. every morning, it gives a pulse into R just to make sure that that switch block is off. Save that in, and I now have night mode and I have all out. I should probably also link the good morning pulse again to this music server to turn the music server back on. Sorted. Night mode, all out. Also visible within here, within the app. The alarm clock to set on the night light is just a case of holding the lower button and then you get to the alarm set. In the app, it's just a case of going to your alarm clock in the app and creating a new entry. So you'd say at what time, and you would say on what days. And that's it. So I could say that this is my work alarm and that I get up at 6:30 every morning to go to work. And that is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And it is repeating. Tick that, There we go. My work alarm is now active. And I can very, very quickly, if it's going to be a bank holiday on the Monday, just turn it off. And then on the Monday evening, turn it back on again. And again, you can do that through the night light. You just do a single tap of the bottom button and it turns the alarm for the next schedule on or off. Again, central, my night operating mode, my night switch, turn it on. Everything starts setting. Everything turns off. Night lights come on my LED strip. Night mode back off. And you can see straight away my LED strip has now changed back to my normal lighting. Wonderful. So now that we've looked at global functions and overviews, so we've now ended up with some function blocks that look quite similar to that. There's my burglar alarm happening again because of that stupid tamper. So now that we've looked at the global functions and night mode and all out mode, let's start looking at some tools we have within Loxone. So again, there's your overviews. So let's go back to this slideshow and let's look at some of those tools we have. So as always, powerful, super cool software with Loxone so that you can do everything you need to and achieve everything that you need to achieve. We have now pretty much completely configured a house, a two-room house, but nevertheless a house. We've got lighting, we've got shading, we've got music, we've got all of those global functions. They're all working perfectly. But now we need to look at some tools we have to check out whether things are right or not, and also to plan projects. So let's start with planning a project from scratch. When you first open up Config, it comes up with a list of all of your projects and you can create a project. But you also have the option in here for project planning. And in project planning, you can actually plan out the bill of materials for a complete project. So I can say what switches I want to use, what lighting products, what shading products, what music products, etc., or whether I just don't want that feature at all. So shading, no, don't want it, fine. I can say what mini server I plan to use. On the next page, I can create all of my rooms. So I can create as many rooms as I like. I can say what room type they are, the room size, number of windows and external doors, internal doors, heating loops, etc., etc. I can also open up each individual room and amend the products in each category of each room. So in the living room, if I wanted to add a mains dim circuit of lights for a center pendant, I've got it here on the left-hand side, 230 volt dimmable output. That is going to be my center pendant. I can adjust the numbers that have been used for auto calculation of certain products. I can also clone rooms, and it clones the entire parts list from them. This planning tool will also work out your power supply requirements. So based on the parts, it works out a power supply requirement. And then when you finish planning, you can open up an Excel spreadsheet with all of these parts, which contains a complete parts list, a parts list by category, and a parts list by room. And they'll also show you an assignment. So how many tree devices I require, how many I've got available, and therefore how many I've got spare, how many inputs and outputs I'm using, and also the space I need in a panel for all of my panel hardware. On that same planning tool, you can also save this planning file so that you can come back to it later. You can create a CSV from this to load straight into our web shop. But the final, most powerful bit of this tool is to create a configuration file from it. And when you do this, it loads all of those products that we've listed into a config file. It pulls all of the rooms in, pulls all of the room sizes in, pulls all of the products in, evens the level of when in the living room I said I had a 230 volt dimmable output, it's added me a dimmer extension and it's even named the first output as center pendant, put it in the category of lighting, and put it in the room of living room. All that I would need to remember is to set the dimming type. For our air and our tree devices, it's put them in the right rooms and the right categories. And then this brings us on to one of the most magical tools we have in config. This button up here, auto configuration. When I press it, I can then select what I want to auto configure, and it will actually spit us out a configured system with the parts that we have. So here we go. Kitchen diner, lighting controller, intelligent room controller, music server, all done. In a bedroom, the same, with a few notes reminding us to do things. And it's even automatically done those memory flags on RAQ. It has also automatically put them on a switch block called night. And it has done all of those functions we have just done manually for us. Now, of course, auto configuration is not perfect. It is not a press a button and walk away. It is going to get you 60, 70% of the way so that you can then make the customized tweaks yourself. But it does save a lot of time and a lot of energy. And it is a great tool that you should try out. The reason I've been showing you it all manually throughout the week is because if we started off by pressing auto config, pages like this are going to look very scary. But now that we know what they all do, we start to get an understanding of what it's given us. Then if we move over to the tools we have after the fact, so after we have a finished config file, we have looked heavily throughout the week at live view and simulation. Please never stop using those. Simulation and live view are so powerful. And remember with live view that you have just normal live view, or you have live view where you can actually amend values in there as well. Other various diagnostic tools we have. On both air and tree, we have some diagnostics that you can run here as well. So when you're connected to a mini server on your tree extension, you can go to tree diagnostics. You can select your branch and you can start diagnostics. And it will tell you if there are any problems found on the tree branch, and it will tell you the device that is dropping packets or the device that is offline. We also have the ability up here to do device status, this little traffic light. And from here, it shows us the status of all of our devices. And for battery devices, it shows us the signal strength and the battery level. Another thing we can do for air is on our Airbase extension, we can right click it. We can do detailed device information. We then have to sit back and wait a few seconds. And then what it does after a few seconds is it will open up a notepad file for us. Here we go. Mine's just opened up on my other screen. And on this notepad file, it will give us the occupancy, so how free each available air channel is. So if we're having issues with signal, we can see if the channel that we're on is very, very busy. So we can see that some of these channels are a little bit busy and we may want to avoid them. We can also, on each individual air product, right click it and do a show air path. And what this does is for an air product, it will tell us the hops it is taking back to the Airbase extension. So we can see here that with my water sensor, it's not doing any hops. It's going straight from the water sensor to the Airbase and on the return leg from the Airbase to the water sensor. But if it was doing hops, it would tell us, and it would also tell us the signal strength at each hop. And then finally, final thing to show you as diagnostics. When you're in the diagnostics tab, Loxone support. When you press this, it opens up TeamViewer for you. If you're ever in contact with our tech support department, they're probably going to ask you to open up Loxone support so that we can dial in and we can take a look with you. And then if we ever ask you to do some really nitty-gritty debugs for us, there is also a debug monitor in Loxone. Don't ask me what all the stuff that it kicks out will mean, but we may ask you to do a debug on something specific and then send us the file, which we can then use internally to try and see what's going on. And you do also have a Loxone link diagnostic as well, just like tree diagnostics. So there are many, many tools built in here to really, really make your life easy and try and both help you plan projects and configure projects quicker, and if any issues arise, to help you diagnose them as quickly as possible. Brilliant. Well, that about solves it for today's topics. Thank you all ever so much for joining. For tomorrow, we don't really have anything specific left to look at config. So for tomorrow, we will just be hosting an open Q&A session for you to ask anything that you might want to ask, and we can do things where we can show you working through specific things that you may have in your mind. Otherwise, thank you all so much for joining. Hope you've enjoyed, and goodbye, everyone.